"You're a useless old man." The words sliced through the night like a blade. My son's anger was raw, unfiltered. He jerked the steering wheel abruptly, and the car swerved slightly on the narrow jungle road. Moonlight barely lit the path ahead, casting long shadows from twisted trees that lined the road like silent witnesses. I didn't argue. I didn't flinch. I simply exhaled, calm, steady. His hand shot out, pushing me roughly toward the door. The metal handle rattled. The car smelled of dust and leather, tension thick in the air. "Get out," he shouted, voice full of venom. I opened the door slowly. The darkness of the jungle night swallowed the empty road, its stillness broken only by distant insect cries and the occasional rustle of leaves. The engine roared as he sped away, tires crunching on gravel, leaving me alone in the shadows. I stood silently, listening to the fading sound of the car. Cold air pressed against my skin. Every nerve alert, every sense aware. I could feel the suspense in the night, the kind of silence that speaks before anything happens. And I stayed calm. Because I knew what to do next. From my pocket, I drew my phone. My fingers moved deliberately, dialing a number I hadn't called in years. He had no idea. No idea the calm patience behind my old quiet demeanor. No idea that 40 minutes from now, everything he thought he controlled would crumble. The jungle around me was alive. Leaves rustled in the wind. A distant owl hooted, its cry eerie and suspenseful. Every snap of a twig beneath my feet, every rustle of animals in the brush, heightened the tension. I was alone, but I was not helpless. The phone rang once, twice, then answered. A soft voice, cautious but eager. I spoke briefly, quietly. Nothing emotional. Nothing loud. Just instructions. Precise, deliberate, unavoidable. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The road ahead stretched endlessly into darkness. I took a slow step forward, letting the suspense build. Every leaf, every shadow, every distant call of wildlife added to the cinematic tension. I was alone. He thought he had won. But he had no idea what waited. Minutes passed. The jungle night seemed eternal. Yet I could feel the shift in the universe, the quiet suspense of what was about to unfold. The calm before the storm is always the most dangerous and the most thrilling. Back in the car, he was driving fast, feeling triumphant. The thrill of power pulsed through his veins. He didn't know the consequences were already in motion. He didn't know that someone was already coming for him, silently, deliberately, without a single sound. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night around me. The suspense in the air was almost tangible, a tension that held every insect, every leaf, every shadow in place. And I waited. 40 minutes. That was all it would take. Somewhere ahead, the darkness seemed to grow thicker. The road twisted, the trees leaning closer, like the jungle itself was part of the plan. I took a step forward, moving quietly, deliberately. The thrill of the unknown, the suspense of what was coming, charged the air. The stars barely pierced the canopy above. A bat flitted across the moonlight. Every sound was amplified in the silent night. And I knew he would soon face the weight of his actions. Not with words, not with force, but with the inevitable truth. The phone vibrated softly in my pocket. A signal, a trigger. A countdown had begun. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let the suspense, the thrill, the tension hang heavy in the jungle night. He had left me thinking he had control, thinking he had power, thinking he had won. He was wrong. 40 minutes. And the jungle, the night, the shadows, they were all silent witnesses to what was coming. I exhaled slowly, calm and measured. While in the distance, the car's roar faded completely, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat, slow, steady, and confident. And then the first signal of karma began to stir. A movement. A presence. Something approaching silently. Not a threat to me, never to me, but to him. The suspense thickened. The thrill of what he would face was almost tangible. And in the stillness of the night, I smiled faintly. Because sometimes the smallest action, the quietest move, can bring the loudest consequences. 40 minutes. That was all it would take. 40 minutes passed slowly, each second stretched like a taut wire. The jungle night pressed in on all sides, shadows shifting with the wind, leaves whispering secrets the darkness didn't dare speak aloud. I stood on the lonely road, calm, patient, silent. Every sound, the distant call of an owl, the rustle of branches, the chirp of insects heightened the suspense. Meanwhile, he was driving recklessly, believing he had escaped the consequences of his actions. He laughed aloud, angry and proud. The thrill of freedom coursed through his veins, but he had no idea that a trap had already been set. Quiet, invisible, unavoidable. The phone vibrated again. I checked it briefly. Confirmation. Everything was in motion. The plan I had enacted with patience and precision was about to unfold. I walked slowly along the road, shadows stretching long across the gravel. Each step deliberate, measured, confident. My old bones did not tremble, because the storm I had unleashed did not rely on strength, it relied on foresight. Faint rustle in the undergrowth caught my attention. I paused, listening. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, not his car. Something else had arrived. The suspense in the air was electric. Every instinct screamed that the night held secrets he was about to discover. He continued down the road, oblivious. The thrill of his arrogance blinded him. He kicked the seat angrily, shouting to the empty night, "I don't care. I don't need anyone." But he did not see the approaching figures, the vehicles pulling into position, ready to expose the consequences he had long ignored. The jungle was a silent accomplice, hiding every movement, heightening the suspense, building the cinematic tension. I took out the USB from my pocket. It was small, unassuming, metallic. He had no idea it was inside the burned clock before, and even less idea that its secrets had traveled ahead of him. Its contents held decades of truths, family secrets, and arrangements he had ignored or disrespected. I activated a final sequence on my phone, sending instructions to the people waiting for him. This was the calm, the thrill, the suspenseful build before the inevitable reckoning. He had left me, thinking he had all the power. He was about to learn how fragile that illusion really was. The jungle grew darker, thicker. Branches clawed at the car as it sped recklessly. Shadows flickered across the windshield, reflections from the moon caught in his wide, arrogant eyes. He didn't notice the vehicle that silently followed him, the tire tracks converging toward a trap designed with precision. The girlfriend was still in the car with him. Her nervous eyes darted from the dark road ahead to his tense, furious hands. Maybe we should turn back," she whispered. He laughed, reckless and sharp. "Don't tell me what to do." The thrill of power blinded him. The first trap activated. A series of signs, lights, and obstacles, nothing dangerous, but enough to startle him, break his rhythm. The car swerved slightly. His heart raced. Sweat formed on his brow. For the first time that night, he felt uncertainty, tension, suspense. I stayed on the side of the road, calm, watching every moment. The thrill of anticipation coursed through me, but there was no panic. Every move he made had been calculated for him to reach this moment, to feel the weight of karma waiting for him. Suddenly, the forest canopy opened slightly, revealing another figure. Not a threat to me, not to the night, but a presence that would ensure he could no longer escape his reckoning. The suspense peaked. Every flicker of shadow, every reflection of moonlight, played into the thriller unfolding on this lonely jungle road. He didn't notice the subtle signals ahead, a stalled vehicle, carefully placed lights, the faint sound of an approaching patrol. Each was part of the cinematic climax I had orchestrated. The thrill of suspense was now suffocating. He was trapped not by force, but by consequence, and it was far more terrifying than any shout or push could have been. The girlfriend grabbed his arm, pointing. Look at that," she whispered, wide-eyed. He glanced ahead and froze. His arrogance melted instantly into panic. The road he thought he controlled was now a stage for consequences he hadn't even imagined. I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension tighten in the air. Every element, the jungle, the night, the shadows, the approaching trap, worked together like a cinematic thriller. He was about to face the full weight of karma, all orchestrated by a calm old man who had been underestimated. And in the shadows, I smiled faintly, because the lesson was almost complete. The suspense, the thrill, the reckoning, all were about to collide. 40 minutes. That was all it would take. He froze completely, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes wide with disbelief. The stalled vehicle ahead was not random. The lights flickered eerily in the dark, illuminating the narrow jungle road like a trap closing in. Every shadow seemed alive, crawling closer, pressing against him, suffocating his sense of control. "What's going on?" he stammered, voice shaky, adrenaline spiking. The girlfriend's hand shook on his arm, eyes darting nervously. Maybe we should get out," she whispered again, tense and fearful. He waved her off, but his confidence was gone. The thrill of arrogance had vanished, replaced by panic he had never felt before. I stayed where I was, calm, observing the chaos I had set into motion. Every subtle movement, the shifting of shadows, the flicker of firelight, the sound of dry leaves under tires built suspense. I could feel the cinematic tension like electricity in the air. Every nerve in my body was alert. Not because I feared, but because I thrived in this orchestrated reckoning. The USB in my pocket hummed faintly, a silent reminder of the secrets he had ignored. Its contents were already in motion, transferring to systems that would expose his arrogance, his ignorance, his failures. The thrill of anticipation surged. He had no idea what was about to unfold. Suddenly, a branch snapped to his right, the sound sharp in the still night. He jerked the wheel, almost losing control. The girlfriend screamed softly. The car fishtailed slightly on the gravel road. Suspense tightened its grip on every heartbeat in that vehicle. Every instinct screamed that he had underestimated the consequences of his own actions. Ahead, the figures I had summoned emerged from the shadows. Not threatening him physically, but their presence was unmistakable, a silent warning that the night had shifted and he was no longer in control. Panic overtook him. He slammed on the brakes, the tires crunching against gravel, the adrenaline surging as fear replaced arrogance. "Dad! What is this?" he muttered, realizing for the first time that I had orchestrated this entire scenario. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The suspense, the thrill, the cinematic tension. Every second, every shadow, every subtle movement spoke louder than words ever could. The jungle seemed alive, pressing in from both sides. Branches scratched at the windshield. Leaves fluttered in the headlights like ghostly hands. Every sound amplified the suspense. Every shadow increased the thrill. He was trapped by consequence, and the trap was entirely of my design. He tried to reverse, panic overtaking his judgment. The vehicle's path was blocked, no escape. The thrill of the night intensified as he realized the reality. His actions, his disrespect, his arrogance had led him here. He was powerless, caught in the consequences he had ignored for so long. The girlfriend clutched the door handle, trembling, watching him finally understand the magnitude of the situation. The suspense was almost unbearable, cinematic in its intensity. Every flash of the headlights, every rustle of leaves, every distant call of night animals added to the drama unfolding on the lonely jungle road. I stepped forward, into the dim moonlight, calm, unhurried. He recognized me instantly. But now, his fear was palpable. The thrill of control had evaporated. He realized that for the first time, he was no longer the one in charge. From my pocket, I withdrew the USB, small and metallic, reflecting faint light. "This," I said calmly, "holds what you should have noticed a long time ago." His eyes widened, sweat dripping down his face. The thrill of suspense surged, the realization that he had been blind. And that truth was finally confronting him in full force. He tried to grab it. I held it just out of reach. The thrill of the chase, the suspense of the moment, reached its peak. Every muscle in his body tensed. Every instinct screamed. But he was powerless against the orchestration of consequences. The jungle wind rustled leaves ominously, branches swaying as if alive, mirroring the suspense and tension coursing through the scene. He fell to his knees in the dirt, chest heaving, eyes locked on the USB, finally grasping the weight of the night, the lesson, the reckoning. The girlfriend whispered, trembling, You can't ignore this." He nodded weakly, fear, shock, and understanding mingling. The cinematic thrill, the suspense, the consequences, the revelation was complete. But one final moment remained, the absolute, unavoidable consequence of his disrespect, orchestrated with precision. I motioned slightly. A vehicle from the shadows emerged, silent, precise, carrying the weight of karma. He froze entirely, eyes wide, trembling. The thrill of suspense was now unbearable, cinematic, almost suffocating. He had been left alone in the jungle, arrogant and foolish, only to realize that his life had been rearranged without him knowing. The USB had exposed his ignorance. The staged arrival of the vehicle ensured he faced the real consequences, a sudden, humbling, inescapable truth. The thrill of the night, the suspense of the trap, the cinematic orchestration all converged in this moment. He slumped against the car, trembling, finally accepting the weight of his actions. The jungle night held its breath. The suspense reached its climax. The thrill of consequence, perfectly timed, delivered the ultimate lesson. He was no longer in control. He had underestimated the calm, calculated patience of a father who had orchestrated every detailed dot, and in that quiet, tense, thrilling night, I knew the final act, complete reckoning, moral closure. And the lesson learned was only minutes away. The jungle night was thick, heavy, alive with suspense. The wind whispered through the trees, the shadows of branches stretching long and twisted across the road. He crouched against the car, heart hammering, trembling, sweat slick on his skin. The arrogance that had fueled him vanished completely. Fear, humility, and disbelief replaced it. The vehicle I had arranged rolled silently to a stop ahead, lights off, shadowed and imposing. He froze. Every instinct screamed danger, though none threatened him physically. The thrill of suspense tightened around him like a noose, inescapable. The jungle had become a stage, and he the star of a reckoning he had never prepared for. "Stay calm," I said, stepping forward slowly, phone in hand, the USB still secure in my pocket. His gaze shifted to me, wide, shaking, recognizing finally that he had underestimated everything me. The night, the plan, the consequences. The girlfriend clutched his arm, eyes wide, her own pulse racing. You didn't. You planned this?" he asked, voice cracking, panic lacing every word. I nodded once, quietly. "Yes, everything you did, every word you shouted, every cruel action. It led here." He glanced around, noticing the silent vehicle, the shifting shadows, the eerie rustle of the jungle. Suspense and tension wrapped around him from every direction. The thrill of what was about to happen surged, uncontrollable. He had left me thinking he was victorious. He was about to learn he was powerless. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB. "This," I said, holding it in the dim light, "holds everything you ignored, everything you disrespected, everything you never valued." His hands trembled as he reached out instinctively. and I held it just beyond reach, letting suspense peak. Every second, every flicker of moonlight, every rustle of the trees added cinematic tension, thrill, and gravity to the moment. The USB's content revealed family secrets, financial truths, long-hidden sacrifices, and decisions I had made to protect him without his knowledge. His knees buckled slightly as he saw the truth. The thrill of revelation collided with terror. He finally understood the weight of arrogance, the cost of ignorance. I stepped closer. "You left me alone tonight, thinking you had power," I said softly, voice calm, unwavering. "You thought I was useless. But the real lesson, the real power, comes from patience and action, not shouting or anger." He sank fully to the ground, trembling. The girlfriend stepped closer, uncertain, but watching intently. She could feel the suspense in the air, the thrill of the night, the cinematic unfolding of consequences. Every flicker of shadow, every whispered leaf, every distant call of the night amplified the intensity. The vehicle ahead silently repositioned, a quiet but unavoidable symbol of the reality he faced. No words, no threats, just consequence. The thrill of suspense surged as he realized he was utterly exposed, utterly powerless. "Look at yourself," I said softly. "Arrogance, anger, disrespect, all gone now. And you finally see the truth, the consequences you never thought would reach you." He buried his face in his hands, trembling violently. The jungle night wrapped around us like a shroud of suspense and revelation. The thrill of discovery, the shock of reality, the cinematic orchestration, it was all complete. Finally, after long moments, he lifted his head. Tears streaked down his face. I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. I didn't see. I didn't understand. I shook my head slowly. "You understand now. That's what matters. And that's why you'll never underestimate consequences again." The girlfriend exhaled softly, relief washing over her face. She had witnessed the full thrill of suspense and revelation. The cinematic night, the shadows, the lights, the USB, the orchestrated trap, all had built to this perfect climax. I stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Sometimes," I said, calm and measured, "the smallest actions, the quietest patience, bring the loudest lessons." He nodded, trembling. Humility replaced arrogance. Respect replaced anger. And finally, comprehension replaced ignorance. The jungle night was quiet now. The vehicle's lights faded into the darkness. The fire of suspense had burned fully, leaving only understanding, reflection, and moral closure. He looked at me again, fully aware for the first time of my patience, my planning, my endurance. I'll never forget this," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "Remember it. Learn from it. And move forward differently." The jungle seemed to exhale, the night releasing the tension it had held for 40 suspenseful, thrilling minutes. The shadows retreated, the stars blinked faintly, and the quiet hum of nocturnal life returned. The thrill, the suspense, the cinematic reckoning, it had all delivered its final lesson. And in that quiet, reflective night, I realized sometimes the smallest act of patience creates the loudest consequences. Sometimes the calmest father teaches the harshest lesson. Sometimes karma waits silently, in the shadows, in the night, and hits exactly when it should. He looked at me once more, humbled, reflective, changed forever. I smiled faintly. The suspense had resolved. The thrill had concluded. The moral and emotional closure was complete. The jungle night remained, alive with whispers, shadows, and secrets. But he would never forget this night, the lesson of arrogance, respect, and patience delivered in full cinematic force.